This is Augie Macro with Cryptid Creatures. Today we are going to talk about one of America's most infamous cryptids. A terrifying legend centuries in the making. A monster of unspeakable evil. The Jersey Devil. The Jersey Devil, also known as the Leeds Devil, is described as being a large 10 to 20 foot long, 6 to 10 foot tall, bipedal dragon-like creature with a horse or camel-like head, adorned with large goat-like horns and glowing red eyes, small clawed arms, long kangaroo-like legs with horse's hooves, large bat-like wings with a 10 to 30 foot wingspan, a long tail, and black, leathery, or hair-covered skin. The creature is also reported making a loud, shrieking noise in the night. Sightings of the devil have been reported primarily in New Jersey, as its name suggests, but also with sporadic reports occurring throughout eastern Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, and the outskirts of New York City. However, the Jersey Devil is said to reside predominantly in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, an over 1 million acre expanse of Atlantic coastal pine barren forest located in the southern portion of the state. Atlantic coastal pine barrens, also called pine lands, are a now fragmented ecosystem due to the expansion of the urban landscape, but can still be found in Massachusetts, on Long Island in New York, in Delaware, and most notably in New Jersey. This type of forest is characterized by its nutrient-poor acidic sandy soil, which promotes the growth of various types of vegetation such as pines, oaks, cedars, holly, honeysuckle, and blueberries, with the forests themselves broken up by cranberry bogs and maritime grasslands. This habitat is often subjected to wildfires and is home to many unique animal species, from tree frogs, turtles, and pine snakes to water birds, deer, bear, and more, many of which are endangered and endemic exclusively to the Pine Barrens. Perhaps the Jersey Devil is one of these rare pineland beasts. Our investigation will take us all throughout this region, beginning in the supposed birthplace of the Jersey Devil, the small village of Leeds Point, about half an hour outside of Atlantic City in Atlantic County, New Jersey. Here we are in the small village of Leeds Point in Galloway Township in Atlantic County, New Jersey. Leeds Point and Galloway Township are considered the epicenter of the Jersey Devil legend, and the tiny community has become globally known for its native monster. Just down the road from here is, perhaps, the actual site where the Jersey Devil story began. It is here where our investigation begins. Here we are at the Shroud's House, also known as the Jersey Devil House, in Leeds Point in Atlantic County, New Jersey. This house is said to have been built on the ruins of a cabin that existed here in the 1700s. It was in that cabin that the Jersey Devil was born. According to legend, on a dark February night in 1735, a woman referred to as Mother Leeds was pregnant with her 13th child. It was said that she was at her wits' end tending to her 12 other children, and was even known to dabble in dark arts and witchcraft. In a fit of desperation, she cursed her unborn child, exclaiming, "Let this one not be a child, but let this one be a devil." On that fateful February night, Mother Leeds gave birth to her 13th child. According to most accounts, he began as a normal, healthy baby boy with blonde hair and blue eyes. But then he began to change, sprouting wings and horns and transforming into a grotesque and frightening demon. Then, according to legend, the creature proceeded to murder Mother Leeds' midwife, attack Mother Leeds and any of the other Leedses that it could find, and fly up the chimney into the night. The creature has since been seen from time to time, terrorizing locals of the Pine Barrens to this day. The Mother Leeds character is said to be a woman named Deborah Smith Leeds, who was born in 1685 in Burlington, New Jersey, and lived in Leeds Point with her husband Japheth Leeds until her death in 1748. Genealogical records show that she did in fact have at least 12 children, whose descendants still populate Leeds Point to this day. Is this where the Jersey Devil came from? Was the Jersey Devil the result of a wicked curse and a demonic spawn? Or is this simply a local legend? We may never know. To learn more about the area of Leeds Point before English settlers, we explored Edwin B. Forsyth National Wildlife Refuge, just outside of town in Atlantic County, New Jersey. Here we are in Edwin B. Forsyth National Wildlife Refuge, just outside of Oceanville in Atlantic County, New Jersey. This 48,000-acre expanse of salt marshes and South Jersey coastline is home to over 360 different species of waterfowl, shorebirds, and seabirds, as well as a large turtle population, and gives you a good idea of what Leeds Point and the surrounding area looked like before European settlers arrived here in the 1600s. That is why we are here. Though the Jersey Devil legend supposedly began in 1735 with the legend of Mother Leeds, there are other similar stories that go back even earlier. The Lenape tribe referred to the Pine Barrens as Papawessing, which translates to the place of the dragon. They told tales of a forest god they called Emsing, which they described as a large dragon-like creature with deer-like antlers and bat-like wings. Later on, when Swedish explorers arrived to the area, they called it Drake Kill, meaning dragon river or dragon channel. This was decades, even centuries, before the arrival of the first English settlers to the area in the 1660s, of whom the Leeds family would be included. Are these early accounts of dragons and forest gods in the Pine Barrens simply coincidence? Or does the Jersey Devil have a far older origin than we once believed? We may never know. If you're planning to travel to Leeds Point yourself and are looking for a bite to eat, be sure to check out the Oyster Creek Restaurant and Boat Bar, located just outside of Leeds Point, actually within the Edwin B. Forsyth National Wildlife Refuge. And while you're there, be sure to get an order of their famous Jersey Devil shrimp. To understand the historical context of the Jersey Devil legend, we have to look at the Leeds family itself and their place in New Jersey history. To do that, we visited St. Mary's Episcopal Churchyard in Burlington, New Jersey, about half an hour down the Delaware from the state capital of Trenton, to the resting place of the man responsible for it all, Daniel Leeds. Here we are in the St. Mary's Episcopal Churchyard in Burlington County, New Jersey. Somewhere in this cemetery is buried Daniel Leeds, an important figure in the history leading up to the Jersey Devil legend. Though we have combed the cemetery for his gravestone, we've been unable to find it. But he was an active member of the congregation which used the cemetery before St. Mary's was built, and is believed by the current rector to have been buried here. Unfortunately, the grave itself seems to have been buried by time, but that does not stop us from discussing the man's place in history. Leeds was born on the 15th of November 1651 in Essex, England, and came with his father to New Jersey in 1676. He was a devout Quaker, a religious sect of Protestants that settled in the area of New Jersey and Pennsylvania to find religious freedom after the splitting from the Church of England. They were known to be pacifistic and to have had friendly relations with the native Lenape, but also to be especially superstitious. In 1687, Leeds published the American Almanac, which contained weather forecast predictions on crops, astrological data, and other such information that almanacs of the time did. But it was accused by the Quakers of using inappropriate language and pagan symbolism. Though Leeds acknowledged this and made a public apology, an order was still sent out to collect all copies of the almanac and have them destroyed. This, of course, made Leeds resentful, and he broke from the Quaker meeting, which actually happens to still stand right next door to here, and continue publishing his almanac. In 1688, he published a book called The Temple of Wisdom, which compiled other authors' writings to create his own theory on the creation of the universe. The book touched on various, one could say, fringe subjects, such as astrology, angelology, mysticism, and demonology, which upset the Quakers, and they suppressed the book however they could. This led Leeds to begin publishing a series of anti-Quaker pamphlets, which claimed that Quakerism denounced the divinity of Christ and was against the English crown. In 1702, Edward Hyde, or Lord Cornbury, became the governor of New Jersey and was very unpopular. Leeds ended up becoming one of his counselors. Leeds was a loyalist to the English crown and convinced Lord Cornbury to not swear in anyone to the assembly who Leeds believed to be disloyal. Leeds' loyalty to Cornbury and the crown led the Quakers to deem him a traitor, solidifying the rift between Leeds and the Quakers. The Quakers, in response to Leeds' anti-Quaker pamphlets, released their own anti-Daniel Leeds pamphlets, which claimed that Leeds was in league with the devil. In 1716, Daniel Leeds retired and passed on the almanac to one of his sons, Titan Leeds. Titan redesigned the almanac to include the Leeds family seal, which included depictions of wyverns, bipedal dragons that have an eerie resemblance to later accounts of the Jersey Devil. Eventually, Titan entered a printing feud with none other than Benjamin Franklin, who was publishing his Poor Richard's Almanac and wished to eliminate some competition. In fact, Franklin even predicted Titan's death and jokingly claimed that Titan had died and his ghost had begun to haunt Franklin. Over time, with the decades of antagonism between the Quakers and Franklin and the Leeds family, a tale began to develop. A tale that the Leeds family practiced witchcraft, that Daniel Leeds was in league with Satan, and that his daughter-in-law, the fabled Mother Leeds, had birthed the hellish monster that took on the form of the family's own dragon-adorned seal, the Leeds Devil. If history and not mere legend tells it, the Jersey Devil was never a physical monster, but a political one and a religious one, a cultural symbol that came to represent the Leeds family itself. Is this true? Is the Jersey Devil really out there in the Pine Barrens? Or is it nothing more than an allegory for our dearly departed Daniel Leeds? We may never know. Back in Leeds Point, we investigated the town's legendary history further to look at the first accounts of the creature after its supposed birth. To do this, we visited the Leeds Point Community Church Cemetery in Leeds Point. Here we are at the Leeds Point Community Church Cemetery in Leeds Point in Atlantic County, New Jersey. This cemetery is now the resting place of almost 50 Leedses, all descendants of, or married to descendants of, Daniel Leeds. It's interesting how connected and dependent both the Jersey Devil legend
and this little corner of South Jersey are upon Daniel Leeds, one man from nearly 3 centuries ago. On its darker side, however, this cemetery has also seen the occasional satanic ritual attempted to summon the Jersey Devil. In spite of this, it is not just those buried here that brings us to this location. There is also a story from the area which tells of a conflict occurring between the Jersey Devil and the local clergy. It is said that after the Jersey Devil was born in 1735, it continued to wreak havoc all across the Leeds Point area. The creature apparently targeted the Leeds family, attacking and attempting to kill them repeatedly. The beast had become such a menace that it is said in 1740 a clergyman was called to perform an exorcism on the monster, banishing it from Leeds Point for 100 years. For the next century, the Jersey Devil did in fact leave, making itself a nuisance elsewhere in the state. But then, in 1840, at the end of its exile, the creature returned with a vengeance, going on a rampage in the area, slaughtering livestock, attempting to kidnap and eat children, bringing blight and drought to crops, and spreading fear and misery throughout the people of Leeds Point. This and other similar tales have given the creature a dramatic reputation. The Jersey Devil has come to be used as a scapegoat for nearly every significant catastrophe in the state, and some even claim that its appearance is a harbinger of a coming war. Other less cosmic tales of its abilities claim that the creature's breath could sour and spoil milk, kill fish, and wither crops. Though the devil seems to have calmed down a bit since then, it has never left, still being heard screaming and flying above the trees at night, still leaving the occasional tracks in the snow to this day. Was the Jersey Devil banished from Leeds Point in 1740, only to return even stronger a century later? Does the beast's presence bring with it an omen of war, famine, or pestilence to come? Or is all of this simply the product of what happens when stories grow, change, and evolve with each new telling of them, as centuries and new generations mold those first stories into folk tales and eventually into the legends we are here remembering and discussing today? We may never know.
Throughout the 1800s, there were many accounts of the creature outside of Leeds Point and the Pine Barrens, some more infamous than others. To look into some of these stories further, we went to Point Breeze in Bordentown in Burlington County, New Jersey, to the village of Hanover Furnace near Fort Dix in Burlington County, New Jersey, and the scenic Barnegat Lighthouse on Barnegat Bay in Ocean County, New Jersey. Here we are at Point Breeze in Delaware and Raritan Canal State Park in Bordentown in Burlington County, New Jersey. Point Breeze was the estate of none other than Joseph Bonaparte, the one-time former king of Spain and Naples, and Napoleon's older brother, who arrived in New Jersey after Napoleon's forced abdication of the throne as Emperor of France in 1814 and his exile to the island of St. Helena in the southern Atlantic. When Napoleon was exiled, Joseph fled France, arriving in America and buying Point Breeze. The estate was formerly owned by American diplomat Stephen Sayre, and Joseph resided here from 1816 to 1839. His more than 800-acre estate became a center of society, with Joseph often entertaining French expatriates, American politicians, and foreign dignitaries on the grounds. This particular building was the gardener's house, and is the only remaining building from the original estate. We have come here today because of an account by Joseph Bonaparte himself, where he described encountering the Jersey Devil. On one winter afternoon, he was out hunting by himself in the woods near the estate, when he came across unusual hoofed tracks in the snow. He described them as being like those of a horse or a donkey rather than a deer, but it was as though the creature had only
been walking on its hind legs. He followed the tracks further, only to find that they ended abruptly before disappearing, as though the animal had just flown off or vanished. As he stood there, perplexed about the sort of beast that could have made these tracks, he heard a strange hissing noise come from behind him. As he turned around, he came face to face with a creature like nothing he had ever seen before. He described it as having the legs of a crane but with horse's hooves, large wings, short arms, a long neck, and a face like that of a horse or camel. They stared at one another, neither moving for some time, before the creature hissed again and took off into the sky. Later, Joseph told some of his friends about what he had encountered, and they relayed to him the Jersey Devil legend. Impressed with the story, he decided to keep a lookout for the creature anytime he went hunting, hoping to add the Jersey Devil to his extensive trophy collection. However, as the political climate in Europe began to settle, Joseph returned to Europe for good, never to return to Point Breeze and never to see the Jersey Devil again. Did Joseph Bonaparte really encounter the Jersey Devil in the woods around his Bordentown estate? We may never know. Here we are at the gates of the archaeological site containing the ruins of Hanover Furnace, outside the small village of the same name in Pemberton Township in Burlington County, New Jersey. Hanover Furnace was an ironworks built in 1791, but was abandoned in the mid-1800s. During the War of 1812 and the Barbary Wars, it is said that cannons, shells, and cannonballs were made at the furnace, and that those cannons were test-fired into the surrounding pines. The furnace is now nothing more than a pile of rubble in the woods, however, down the road, which is now gated off and off limits to the public. But it was here that in the early 1800s, another sighting of the Jersey Devil occurred, this time by American naval hero Commodore Stephen Decatur. Commodore Stephen Decatur was born on the 5th of January, 1779 in Sinapatuxent, Maryland, to Continental Navy Commodore and Revolutionary War veteran Stephen Decatur Sr. Decatur grew up to join the U.S. Navy and become a naval hero, fighting against the French in the Quasi-War, fighting in North Africa in both of the Barbary Wars, and fighting against the British in the War of 1812. He died on March 22, 1820 in Washington, D.C. According to legend, however, he also encountered the Jersey Devil here at the Hanover Furnace. It was said that he was inspecting cannonballs being forged and visited the firing range to see cannons being tested. The Jersey Devil supposedly flew across the firing range in the sky, prompting Decatur to fire a cannonball at the creature. When he fired, what should have been a direct hit went straight through the devil, like a ghost. The monster then flew away unscathed. This was the last time Decatur would see the Jersey Devil. Did Commodore Stephen Decatur actually encounter and even fire upon the Jersey Devil? Was it just a misidentified animal, such as a sandhill crane? Did he indeed see the beast, but perhaps his ego as a renowned Commodore kept him from admitting he had in fact missed his mark? Or is the Jersey Devil a far more supernatural entity than once thought? We may never know. Here we are at the Barnegat Lighthouse at the northern tip of Long Beach Island on Barnegat Bay, outside the town of Barnegat Light in Ocean County, New Jersey. We've come here to discuss legends of the Jersey Devil on Barnegat Bay, which have been told by mariners and sailors in the area for centuries. One of the most famous tales involves New Jersey's infamous pirate Captain Kidd. One of Kidd's trademarks was that any time he buried treasure in a location, he would behead and kill one of his men so that their ghost would guard his booty for all eternity. Legend has it that Kidd had beheaded one of his men at Barnegat Bay, and that his ghost remains here to this day. It is even said that the Jersey Devil befriended the spirit of the headless pirate, being seen in the evenings walking along the beach and in the marshes. The Jersey Devil has also been reported watching ships come into the bay, waiting for them to sink so he can laugh at them. In 1870, mariners even reported sighting the devil cavorting with a mermaid at sea. Are any of these accounts true? Does the Jersey Devil really go on evening strolls with the ghost of a beheaded pirate? Or find humor in sinking ships? Or go on romantic rendezvous with maidens of the sea? Or are these stories nothing more than light-hearted folk tales and seafarers' flights of fancy? We may never know.
In January of 1909, the Jersey Devil legend reached a climax, with hundreds of eyewitnesses from all walks of life, from New York City to Washington, D.C., reporting the creature, but with sightings being concentrated around Philadelphia. To investigate this further, we visited the Philadelphia Zoo in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Here we are at the Philadelphia Zoo in the Centennial District of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The Philadelphia Zoo was the first true zoo in the United States, being chartered by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania on March 21st, 1859, and opening July 1st, 1874. The zoo is home to over 340 different species of animals from around the world, and is a wonderful place to visit for anyone interested. However, we have come here because in January of 1909, the Jersey Devil went on a rampage across the region, primarily right here in Philly. This 1909 flat began on January 16th, with hoofed footprints being found outside of Woodbury in Gloucester County, New Jersey. These tracks were said to go right over walls, onto the roofs of buildings and houses, and under fences, as though the creature were hopping or flying over obstacles. These tracks inevitably led to massacred livestock whose bodies were left dismembered, mangled, and drained of blood. Sightings of the creature soon spread across the area, with the devil being sighted flying over Haddon Heights, Camden, Trenton, and Atlantic City in New Jersey, and over Philadelphia and Bristol in Pennsylvania. But these sightings spread even further, going as far west as Lock Haven and Williamsport in north-central Pennsylvania, as far south as Baltimore, Maryland, and Washington, D.C., and as far north as Newark, New Jersey, and the outskirts of New York City. However, the sightings were concentrated in the Philadelphia area. Hundreds of eyewitnesses reported sighting the creature flying overhead, killing livestock, raiding chicken coops, and leaving tracks in the snow. A Burlington police officer encountered the creature and identified it as a Jabberwock, from Lewis Carroll's poem Jabberwocky and the similar dragon-like creature featured in it. Like its fictional counterpart, it was described as having eyes like blazing coals and no teeth. Onlookers said it looked like a winged kangaroo and flew to Collingswood, then to Morristown. On January 21st, a trolley car in Haddon Heights, New Jersey was reportedly attacked by the Jersey Devil before it flew away. On the same day, it was reportedly shot in the leg by a telegraph worker near Atlantic City, hosed down by the local fire department in West Collingswood, New Jersey, and attacked a dog in Camden, tearing a chunk of flesh from the poor animal's cheek. This led to mass hysteria and widespread panic in the area. Schools would not let their children out for recess, for fear they would be grabbed by the devil, and many schools even had to close due to low attendance. Businesses closed, the police were swamped with calls, and news reports only seemed to sensationalize the accounts even more. In the case of the Philadelphia Zoo, the zoo's superintendent at the time, Robert D. Carson, offered a $10,000 reward for the creature's capture, almost $350,000 in today's money. Of course, that reward was never collected, but there was a Jersey Devil that was said to be captured by the 9th and Arch Street Dime Museum in Philadelphia. This was one of many what were referred to as dime museums,
which were basically cabinets of curiosity or carnival sideshows in a museum setting, with galleries of oddities, exotic specimens, and unusual creatures, akin to P.T. Barnum's American Museum. The 9th and Arch Street Dime Museum was functioning at the time of the 1909 Jersey Devil flap, but they needed publicity and business, and so they took advantage of the devil panic. They claimed to have captured the beast in Fairmount Park, not far from the zoo actually, and displayed it for public viewing. However, the truth of the matter is far more depressing than the museum's sensational claims. The animal they called the Jersey Devil was in fact a kangaroo, which they had adorned with false wings and painted with green stripes. They then harassed the animal with a metal prod, making it produce agonizing screams. The 1909 flap began and ended in a week, but left the populace across the eastern seaboard terrified and searching for answers. Scientists, for the first time, began to take the story seriously, as eyewitnesses demanded logical explanations for what they had seen. The most popular theory at the time was that the Jersey Devil was actually an extinct species that had survived, specifically a pterosaur, in a limestone cave nearby. So, what happened in January of 1909? Did hundreds of people from New York to DC encounter the Jersey Devil? Why did it make itself known then, and why in such populated areas? And what would happen if the devil returned today to terrorize the people of the Delaware Valley once more? We may never know. Here we are in the town of Lock Haven in Clinton County, Pennsylvania, in the I-80 corridor of the Pennsylvania wilds. It was here where in January of 1909, the Jersey Devil made his most far-reaching appearance. According to local accounts, on January 28th in the nearby city of Williamsport in Lycoming County, the creature's tracks were found in the snow in a local's backyard and on a local golf course. 2 days later, the Jersey Devil made his appearance here. The building behind me is a paper mill, which now is owned by the First Quality Tissue Company, but at the time was owned by the Hammer Mill Paper Company, which owned many mills in the area. It was here where a local night watchman by the name of E.W. Rogers reported sighting the creature flying in the sky over the building. He described it as having fiery red eyes, a horse-like head, 3-foot-long legs, large wings, and a 5-foot-long forked tail. In the subsequent days, more tracks were found in the snow, more people saw it flying in the sky, and some locals even reported the creature landing on their roofs, making a ruckus and leaving tracks which would be discovered in the following morning. These sightings continued throughout the I-80 corridor until the beginning of February, whenever the creature, assumingly, flew back home to New Jersey. In the 1980s, there was another smaller flap of sightings which occurred in Wharton State Forest in Burlington County, New Jersey. So we traveled there to investigate. While there, we also explored the historic Bat's Toe Village, which also resides in the forest. Here we are in Wharton State Forest, in the depths of the Pine Barrens, in Burlington County, New Jersey. Wharton State Forest has been host to Jersey Devil sightings for centuries. However, during the 1980s, there was a particular rash of sightings in the park. In 1980, Chief Ranger Alan McFarlane saw the aftermath of a massacre on a nearby farm. 4 pigs were found killed, the backs of their heads eaten, and their bodies slashed and mutilated. Not one track or drop of blood was found around their bodies. Throughout the 80s, there was report after report from campers, hikers, hunters, and local teens of the creature flying above the trees,
attacking animals, letting out blood-curdling screams, and leaving mysterious hoofed tracks. This 1980s flap is particularly significant, however, because the 80s were the era of the Satanic Panic. During the Satanic Panic, Christian fundamentalists and adults, suspicious of changing culture, claimed that metal music and Dungeons and Dragons, among other things, had direct connections to Satanism, and that many youngsters and teens that were into these things were being brainwashed into and were practicing Satanism and demon worship. This led to a cultural hysteria around all things fringe and new, so anyone who had seen the Jersey Devil or showed interest in finding it were deemed cultists and Satan worshippers, wanting to corrupt or destroy the classic God-fearing American way of life. Is Wharton State Forest the home of the Jersey Devil, and perhaps even the site of satanic rituals to summon the beast? We may never know. Here we are in Batstow Village, at the Batstow Historic Site in Wharton State Forest in Burlington County, New Jersey. The village was built in 1766 and has been involved in the Pine Barrens history since the Revolutionary War. It is now preserved as a place of historical interest by the state of New Jersey and is a fascinating stop if one finds themselves in the area. More importantly for our purposes, reports of the Jersey Devil have surfaced from Batstow, with locals describing the beast flying around the village at night, making its iconic shrieks and leaving the occasional hoofed tracks. Does the Leeds Devil really haunt Batstow Village? We may never know.
If you happen to find yourself in the area of Wharton State Forest, be sure to check out the small town of Hammonton, dubbed the blueberry capital of the world, where they have fully embraced their blueberry farming heritage, from blueberry iconography to a blueberry festival, held the last Sunday of June annually since 1953. Also in the area is the town of Sweetwater, situated on the Mullica River a few miles from Batstow Village. Sweetwater is home to the Sweetwater Marina and River Deck, a restaurant, bar, marina, and event space which happens to sport a serene view of the river as well as a 14-foot-tall, chainsaw-carved wooden statue of the Jersey Devil himself. There have been many explanations proposed as to what exactly the Jersey Devil is. It's obviously much more than just a hockey mascot, let's be sure of that. Some believe it to be an undiscovered species of some description, usually some type of mammal. Others believe it to be a misidentified sandhill crane, as it shares the large wings, long legs, long neck, and the crane has red patches over its eyes, perhaps appearing to be red eyes. Others believe it to be a misidentified great horned owl, sharing the large size, large wings, nocturnal behavior, eye shine, shrieking call, and some believe the owl's horn-looking feathers atop its head could be mistaken for real horns. A more recent theory is that perhaps the Jersey Devil is in fact a misidentified hammer-headed bat, a species of large fruit bat from Africa, which shares a startling resemblance with the devil. Though this animal is native to another continent, it is believed that the bats might have escaped from a zoo or traveling circus, or perhaps the bats even stowed away on a cargo ship from Africa back in the 1700s, starting a breeding population in the Pine Barrens. Accounts of hoofed tracks in the snow and mutilated livestock may be explained away by misidentified or warped tracks from deer or other such animals, wild dog killings, or especially bloody hoaxes. Legends such as the Mother Leeds story were likely based on political farce, and events such as the 1909 and 1980s flaps may be explained away by mass hysteria. Some more outlandish theories even claim that the devil is a surviving pterosaur, dragon, ultra-terrestrial, or omen, more like the Mothman and Thunderbirds. And of course, some believe that the monster is in fact of a hellish origin, a demon summoned into this world through witchcraft and dark occult arcana. Are any of these claims true? Will we ever understand the true nature of this creature? One of America's most notorious monsters, a cultural icon which defines the folklore of the Garden State, the devil who went down to Jersey? We may never know. Thanks for watching, and to watch our previous and future episodes, visit the Cryptid Creatures YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, and tell your friends. Cryptid Creatures is brought to you by the Kitty Petters Union, Cobblestone Recording Company, and my dad's show, Meet the Pressers. This is Cryptid Creatures with Augie Macro, signing off.